Welcome to Daily Wisdom, Walking the Path with the Buddha, a podcast shared by David Roylance. This podcast is dedicated to guiding you to completely eliminate the discontent mind and the suffering it causes by attaining enlightenment. Learn and practice the teachings of Gotama Buddha that will guide you to fully attain a peaceful, calm, serene, and content mind with joy. To support this podcast, visit patreon.com/support Buddha or visit buddhadailywisdom.com, where you will discover a full range of courses, retreats, and online learning resources to assist you on the path to enlightenment. Now, here's our teacher to share more.
Sawadee Kap. Hello and welcome to Daily Wisdom, Walking the Path with the Buddha. Today is our Pali Canon and English study group, and we're studying the words of the Buddha. We're in volume 11, which is titled The Realms of Existence. We're going to be studying chapters 11 through 20. In this particular program, what I do is I invite students in Zoom to volunteer to read a chapter, and then after a student reads a chapter, I will then share some teachings on that, and then I'll open up to any and all questions that you guys have related to the chapter. You can put your questions into Facebook, YouTube, or Zoom in the comments section, and I'll be able to see that. Or if you're in Zoom, you can also electronically raise your hand and ask any and all questions that you like. So is there anyone in Zoom who would like to volunteer to read this first chapter, chapter 11? Okay, looks like Samantha. Go ahead, ma'am.
Thank you, Teacher David. Chapter 11, Four Kinds of Generation. Sariputta, there are these four kinds of generation. What are the four? Egg-born generation, womb-born generation, moisture-born generation, and spontaneous generation. What is egg-born generation? There are these beings born by breaking out of the shell of an egg. This is called egg-born generation. What is womb-born generation? There are these beings born by breaking out of the caul, the amniotic membrane, including a fetus. This is called womb-born generation. What is moisture-born generation? There are these beings born in a rotten fish, in a rotten corpse, in rotten porridge, in a cesspit, or in a sewer. This is called moisture-born generation. What is spontaneous generation? There are gods and inhabitants of hell and certain human beings and some beings in the lower worlds. This is called spontaneous generation. These are the four kinds of generation.
Okay, thank you, Samantha. So it's important to understand that when the Buddha was teaching, there wasn't really a strong education system in place 2,500 years ago in that part of the world. So people were basically learning from their household. They were learning about the world around them, and they were maybe learning a trade from their mom or their dad or, their aunts and uncles and people like this. So when people were ordaining with the Buddha, he was essentially like their adopted father. And, he never talks about it that way, but you can see that people leaving their home, leaving their mom and dad, leaving their family behind, and now they needed an education, not just on the path to enlightenment, but about the world around them, because that's understanding the wisdom of the world and the natural laws. And they didn't have science classes, and they didn't have history classes, and this strong education system that we have now with elementary, middle, high school, universities, graduate studies, and all these kinds of things. So here, this is a place where the Buddha is teaching his students about how beings come into the world and essentially the science behind this. And he's talking about it in a very rudimentary way. It's very basic, very simple, very straightforward and easy to understand, where we kind of explain these things in a lot more scientific ways today. But here he's describing the ways that beings essentially come into the world is through eggs. We know that certain birds and turtles and alligators and crocodiles and things like this, they come into the world through eggs. So we can independently verify that, and we know that to be true. We know that there's some beings that come into the world through the womb. Human beings do that, and there's some animals that do that as well. And we know about moisture-born generation, which the Buddha gives you details of what that is here. like maggots and things like this. And then he talks about this spontaneous generation, which, we're probably less familiar with and maybe not have even experienced ourselves, because I haven't seen this myself, where Buddha's saying that there are gods and inhabitants of hell and even certain human beings and some beings in the lower worlds, which would be animal world and the afflicted spirits. This is called spontaneous generation, where they just spontaneously come into existence. So I haven't verified that part of it, but this is what the Buddha is teaching. So he must have verified it in some way to be able to teach that. So he's helping his students to understand how beings come into the world through these 4 different types of ways. Do you guys have any questions here on this? Okay, I'm not seeing any questions anywhere. So we'll go to chapter 12. Is there someone who would like to read this one? Okay, Keely, go ahead, ma'am.
9 apes of beings. Monks, there are these 9 apes of beings. What line? There are monks beings that are different in body and different in perception, such as humans, some heavenly beings, and some in the lower world. This is the first ape of beings. There are beings that are different in body, but identical in perception, such as the heavenly beings of Brahma's God's company that are reborn through the first jhana. This is the second abode of beings. There are beings that are identical in body but different in perception, such as the heavenly beings of streaming radiance. This is the third abode of beings. There are beings that are identical in body and identical in perception, such as the heavenly beings of refulgent glory. This is the fourth abode of beings. There are beings that are non-percipient without experience, such as the heavenly beings that are non-percipient. This is the fifth abode of beings. There are beings that with the complete surmounting of perceptions of forms, with the passing away of perceptions of sensory impingement, with non-attention to perceptions of diversity, perceiving space is infinite, belong to the base of infinite of space. This is the sixth abode of beings. There are beings that, by completely surmounting the base of the infinity of space, perceiving consciousness is infinite, belong to the base of the infinity of consciousness. This is the seventh abode of beings. There are beings that, by completely surmounting the base of the infinity of consciousness, perceiving there is nothing, belong to the base of nothingness. This is the eighth abode of beings. There are beings that, by completely surmounting the base of the nothingness, belong to the base of neither perception nor non-perception. This is the ninth abode of beings. These are the 9 abodes of beings. That's all. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Keely. So an abode is a dwelling. This is where a being would reside, in terms of the Buddha talking about, different mental states here. I don't really have much information on this other than what you see with the words of the Buddha. And I've added some stuff down here that I've shared that helps you to understand kind of a bit about this chapter, but I really don't have much to share about this because it's not something that is directly needed in order to be able to make your way to enlightenment. But if there's any questions that you guys have, I'll try to answer them to the best of my abilities. Just let me know if you guys have any questions. Okay, I don't see any questions. So, okay, let's move to the next chapter. This is chapter 13. Whoever reads this one, we're just going to read the top section of this. I think this one, if I remember correctly, yeah, it goes on quite a bit. We're just going to read the top section here. Would someone like to read this? Okay, Samantha.
5 destinations and similes of destination. Sariputta, there are these 5 destinations. What are the 5? Hell, the animal realm, the realm of afflicted spirits, human realm, and heavenly realm. I understand hell and the path and way leading to hell, and I also understand how one who has entered this path will, on the dissolution of the body after death, reappear in a state of deprivation, in an unhappy destination, in perdition, in hell. I understand the animal realm and the path and way leading to the animal realm, and I also understand how one who has entered this path will, on dissolution of the body after death, reappear in the animal realm. I understand the realm of afflicted spirits and the path and way leading to the realm of afflicted spirits. And I also understand how one who has entered this path will, on the dissolution of the body after death, reappear in the realm of afflicted spirits. I understand human realm and the path and way leading to the human realm. And I also understand how one who has entered this path will, on the dissolution of the body after death, reappear among human beings. I understand the heavenly realm and the path and way leading to the heavenly realm. And I also understand how one who has entered this path will, on the dissolution of the body after death, reappear in a happy destination in the heavenly realm. I understand Nibbana and the path and way leading up to Nibbana. And I also understand how one who has entered this path will, by realizing for himself with direct knowledge, here and now, enter upon and reside in the liberation of mind and liberation by wisdom that are taintless with the destruction of the taints.
Okay, thank you, Samantha. So we're just going to read this top section because what the Buddha is doing here is he's essentially laying out the 5 realms. And remember, he taught the 5 realms because this is true reality, and you can independently verify this. Some people have had contact with beings in the hell realm, even though they're formless. Some people have seen them or heard them. Of course, you've had plenty of interaction with animals. You may have had interaction with beings in the afflicted spirit realm, which are ghosts, or you may have that in the future. You've had plenty of interaction with beings in the human realm, and you're in the human realm now. And some people may or may not have had interaction with beings in the heavenly realm. These are the 5 realms that the Buddha taught. Now, you're going to see lots of variations out there. You'll see that people are saying the Buddha taught 6 realms or 8 realms or 9 or even 32 realms and beyond. But you can know with 100% certainty what the Buddha taught and what he didn't teach, because you can see it here in the Pali Canon. And then if you end up having the opportunity to independently verify these, you'll know that they're true. So what the Buddha is saying here is that he knows the path. In other words, he knows what it takes for someone to be reborn into the realm of hell, the animal realm, the realm of afflicted spirit, the human realm, and the heavenly realm. But then ultimately he says, I know the path to enlightenment. This isn't a destination, it's a mental state that you can experience in this life or at death. And that's the ultimate goal of the path. These 5 realms are not permanent. Beings are moving in and out of these realms all the time. And this human realm is the ideal existence, because in this realm you experience pleasant feelings, painful feelings, and neither painful nor pleasant feelings. And you tend to have built-in motivation to be able to make your way to enlightenment. Where the beings in hell, animal realm, and afflicted spirits, they can't get to enlightenment. They're going to need to be reborn into the human realm or heavenly realm. And then the beings in the heavenly realm, they only experience pleasant feelings, so they tend to lack motivation. They tend to be very complacent, so they're not actually making their way towards enlightenment. And they are still in the cycle of rebirth. It's not the ideal existence, and it's not a permanent existence. No matter what you've been taught before, you can independently verify the universal truth of impermanence and know that these places are not permanent. And there's nobody that's sending you to one of these places. It's our decisions that lead to any particular result that we experience. So based on the condition of the mind at the time of death, an individual is going to be reborn if they have not yet attained enlightenment. And now, depending on the level of their pollution in their mind, they're going to now experience rebirth in one of these realms. So it's not like there's some being or entity that's watching over every last little thing you do in your life and then judging you to determine where you go. And there's not a permanent place for you to go in terms of these realms. Instead, it's the status of your mind at the time of death. If you've been working on your mind, reducing your pollutions, and you haven't yet got to enlightenment, then there's less pollution in the mind. So the cause and effect of that is you will be reborn in a destination like maybe human or heavenly realm. Whereas if you have a lot of pollution, you haven't been and training your mind, then you're going to need to be reborn into these lower realms in order to extinguish some of that. Because, for example, let's just say someone in the human realm was having a lot of sexual misconduct, where they are going out having sex with lots and lots of people, right? Maybe just very promiscuous and having lots of sex with lots of people. Well, that's the way an animal functions. They have sex with lots of different beings. So even though the individual is in the human realm, their mind is functioning very much like an animal. So by the time they die, if they haven't extinguished that, they're going to need to be reborn into the animal realm in order to extinguish that, so they can go around and have sex with lots of different beings in the animal realm. So the cause and effect relationship here is that whatever the status of our mind is at the time of death, determining the type of pollution or how much pollution we have in the mind, that's what's going to determine where we're reborn. So it's not any kind of being that's sending us anywhere whatsoever. So the Buddha is helping you to be able to see that, yes, he understands how an individual is reborn in all these different places. And here in a moment, he's going to share some details with you on a particular discourse that helps you to see how beings are reborn into hell, the animal realm, and afflicted spirits. And then as we go in this book, he's going to share with you all kinds of details about how beings are reborn into each one of these individual realms, including the human realm and the heavenly realm, how that occurs. So you're going to be able to gain that insight over the course of studying in this particular book. So let me know if you guys have questions. Remember, you can put that into Facebook, YouTube, or Zoom, or you can raise your hand in Zoom and ask any questions that you like. It looks like Samantha has a question. Go ahead, ma'am.
Thank you. You were first talking about this chapter about how we have had contact with some of the different realms. And I've wondered, since studying with you, what your thoughts are on, first of all, two people. So for me, I'm just going to use the example of American Native Americans who appear to be more aware or kind of tapped into spirits, whether it be animal spirits or perhaps ancestral spirits. And if that is their way of having contact with them. And then also what your thoughts are on people who consider themselves mediums, who, supposedly can communicate with animals or with other beings who have either passed on. I'm just wondering how that fits into our studies.
Yeah, that's all real possibilities of what really can occur. And as somebody's mind is awakening, they can experience those kinds of things. But the Buddha teaches you that it's unwise to cling to that, and it's unwise to essentially make money from those things. So like fortune tellers or mediums or things like this, the Buddha teaches that, yes, these things are all possible. This is what you can experience, but it's unwise to cling to it because it's impermanent. And the ultimate goal is to get to liberation. And if you cling to these, what I will refer to as special abilities, then you're not going to be able to experience enlightenment. And if an individual bases their livelihood off of these kinds of things, well, someday when they don't have that ability anymore, now they're not able to sustain themselves. So the Buddha teaches that, yes, these things are possible and you can experience these for yourself. I experienced these for a while at one time too, but I was disinterested in clinging to it and just move beyond it. And you experience that too when your mind is trained. You might even experience it now, where you have what I would refer to as omniscience, where like maybe you're sitting there thinking about a friend, a certain friend or family member, and then like 30 seconds later they call you on the phone. It's like you knew it was going to happen before it happened. This is the capability of the mind. And I don't know a whole lot about Native Americans. I know some because I have that in my background and my ethnic, makeup of this being, but I don't know a lot about their rituals and ceremonies, but I do know they are very much connected to spirits and stuff like that, and communicating with spirits. And that is ability that people have, but it's really, in my opinion, unwise to do those kinds of things because it takes your human mind and leans it in that direction towards the afflicted spirit realm, where someone can easily be reborn into the afflicted spirit realm. But whether someone chooses to do that or not, it's up to them. I would never judge somebody in any regard if they chose to do any of those kinds of things. Even if somebody chose chose to, worship beings in hell or something like that, that's their choice. That's their free will choice. It's just unwise to do these kinds of things. Instead, what the Buddha teaches is to stay focused on getting to liberation and getting to enlightenment. And that's what I would encourage people to do as well.
Okay, thank you very much.
You're welcome. Okay, I don't see any questions anywhere else. So let's move on to the next one. And as we go through these, and I'm not reading certain parts of this book, you guys are welcome to ask questions. When we get to questions on any of these particular chapters, if you have read them and you're like, hey, David, we didn't read this, but I have a question on it, you're welcome to ask me those questions. It just, in the interest of time, there's going to be some chapters here sometimes that are like 10 or 12 pages long where the Buddha's giving a discourse, and we're just going to read a certain portion of it. But if there's ever a question, you guys can always ask those questions about anything, even if we haven't read it. So it looks like Robert might be volunteering for this one, or maybe he has a question.
Yep, I can read.
All right, great. Thanks, Robert.
10 courses of unwholesome dhamma deposited in hell. Impurity by body, kunda, threefold. Impurity by speech is fourfold. Impurity by mind is threefold. And how kunda is impurity by body threefold. 1. Here, someone destroys life. He is murderous, bloody-handed, given to blows and violence, merciless to living beings. 2. He takes what is not given. He steals the wealth and property of others in the village or forest. 3. He engages in sexual misconduct. He has sexual relations with women who are protected by their mother and father, brother, sister, or relatives, who are protected by their teachings, who have a husband whose violation entails a penalty, or even with one already engaged. It is in this way that impurity by body is threefold. And how kunda is impurity by speech fourfold. 1. Here someone speaks falsehood. If he is summoned to a council, to an assembly, to his relative's presence, to his club, or to the court, and questioned as a witness thus, "So, good man, tell what you know." Then, not knowing, he says, "I know," or knowing, he says, "I do not know." Not seeing, he says, "I see," or seeing, he says, "I do not see." Thus, he knowingly speaks falsehood for his own benefit, or for another's benefit, or for some insignificant worldly benefit. 2. He speaks argumentatively. Having heard something here, he repeats it elsewhere in order to divide those people from these, or having heard something elsewhere, he repeats it to those people in order to divide them from those. Thus he is one who divides those who are united, a creator of divisions, one who enjoys separation, rejoices in separation, finds pleasure in separation, a speaker of words that create separation. 3. He speaks harshly. He speaks such words as are rough, hard, hurtful to others, offensive to others, bordering on anger, unconducive to concentration. 4. He indulges in idle chatter. He speaks at an improper time, speaks falsely, speaks what is unbeneficial speaks opposite to the teachings and the discipline at an improper time. He speaks such words as are unwise, unreasonable, rambling, and unbeneficial. It is in this way that impurity by speech is fourfold. And how kunda is impurity by mind threefold. 1. Here someone is full of longing, craving. He longs, craves for the wealth and property of others. Thus, oh, may what belongs to another be mine. 2. He has a mind of ill will and intentions of hate. Thus, may these beings be slain, slaughtered, cut off, destroyed, or obliterated. 3. He holds wrong view, ignorance, unknowing of true reality, and has an incorrect perspective. Thus, there is nothing given, nothing sacrificed, nothing offered. There is no fruit or result of wholesome and unwholesome actions. There is no this world, no other world. There is no mother, no father. There are no beings spontaneously reborn. There are in the world no ascetics and Brahmins of right conduct and right practice who, having realized this world and the other world for themselves by direct knowledge, experience, make them known to others. It is in this way that impurity of mind is threefold. These kunda are the 10 courses of unwholesome dhamma, is because people engage in these 10 courses of unwholesome Gama, that hell, the animal realm, the realm of afflicted spirits, and other bad destinations are seen. Monks, one possessing these 10 qualities is deposited in hell as if brought there.
Okay, thank you, Robert. So this is one of the places where you can find, one of the rare places where you can find the Buddha really laying out certain conduct that leads to rebirth in these lower realms. And it's not the conduct itself that is leading to that, because like I mentioned, there's no being that's overseeing you, looking at all your conduct and then sending you to one place or another. It's that in order to do any of these kinds of things, the mind needs to be defiled. It needs to have pollution. So for example, to destroy life or to kill, right, and be merciless to living beings, there needs to be a certain amount of craving, anger, and ignorance in the mind. Those three poisons, that longing, yearning, the ill will and hostility, and the lack of wisdom to realize that the natural law of Gama that they're going to experience results from that. So in order to kill, steal, or have sexual misconduct, there's going to be a certain level of craving, anger, and ignorance in the mind, and it's going to be quite high. And that's why individuals at the time of their death, based on the status of their mind, are then going to be reborn in the hell realm, animal realm, or realm of afflicted spirits. And then the same thing for these things around speech. There needs to be a certain amount of craving, anger, and ignorance in the mind to be able to speak falsehoods, to be able to be argumentative, where an individual's arguing, where there's harsh speech or this idle chatter, right? There's a craving, anger, and ignorance in the mind because of that. And then the Buddha actually gets to that here where he talks about impurity of the mind. This first one, he talks about full of longing, which is craving. He has a mind of ill will, which is the anger, hatred, and ill will, and all those lesser versions like frustration, agitation, and annoyance. And then when someone holds wrong view, that's the mind having this ignorance or the unknowing of true reality. Ultimately, wrong view is to not understand the Four Noble Truths, which is the ignorance or the unknowing of true reality. But the Buddha goes into that deeper here, where he talks about someone who doesn't understand the natural law of Gama, for example. He says that, where there's no fruit or result of wholesome or unwholesome actions. That's if somebody thinks there's no results of wholesome or unwholesome actions, they don't understand the natural law of karma, and they don't see that there's this cause and effect between decisions that you make and what you experience in day-to-day life. So the Buddha is saying with all of this in the mind, an individual is going to be reborn in these lower realms. And if someone has all 10 of these qualities, he's saying, okay, this individual is going to be reborn in hell, as if brought there, right? Deposited into this particular realm. So this is a place where you can see the Buddha talking about certain moral conduct, where he's connecting the moral conduct to this rebirth in the various realms, because all throughout his core central teachings, he's teaching you about cleaning up your moral conduct. And by cleaning up your moral conduct, you're cleaning up the pollutions of the mind. And by cleaning up the pollutions of the mind, you're getting closer and closer to enlightenment. But if an individual isn't doing that, then that's what's going to lead to rebirth. And now he's showing you that connection between the moral conduct and rebirth in any of these particular realms. And it's all based on the underlying pollutions in the mind and whatever the status of the mind is at the time of death. Do you guys have any questions on this? Remember, you can put that into Facebook, YouTube, or Zoom, or you can raise your hand in Zoom and ask any questions that you like. So it looks like Samantha has a question.
Yes, I think maybe I have misunderstood something you said on the last chapter, and also this one, where it's your current state of mind when you die that decides which realm you go on to. So let's say I have engaged in, like, I've got all 10 of these emotions going on, and maybe sexual misconduct is not the worst, so I wouldn't necessarily go to the animal realm for that. If you have all of the misconduct going on, I thought that your Gama would kind of dictate which realm you would go to, but if you've got, all of these going on, then where do you go? Maybe I'm not thinking about sex right before I die, but, I don't know, maybe about killing somebody. Would that send me to a different realm?
It's not about what you're thinking about at the exact moment of death. It's about
Okay.
the status of your mind and what the levels of these pollutions are. So if somebody's been doing all of these things throughout their life, then they're going to have a certain amount of craving and a certain amount of anger and a certain amount of ignorance. Or if we'd like to bring it into the 10 fetters, we could talk about the 10 fetters, that there's going to be a certain level of those. So at the time of death, there's going to be a certain status of where these different pollutions are, and that's what's going to determine where you're reborn.
Okay, thank you.
That question came up this morning at the temple too, so it's good you asked it. Let me see if we have any questions on Facebook or YouTube. I don't see any there, so let's move to the next one. Is there someone who would like to read chapter 15? Okay, I'll just take these in order. It looks like Keely put her hand down, so we'll go to Samantha.
Well, Keely can have it. I think she likes the short ones.
Yeah, would you like to read, Keely?
Yes, thanks, Samantha. Dangerous to one of unwholesome morality. Householders, there are these 5 dangers to one of unwholesome morality, of failure in moral conduct. What are they? In the first place, he suffers great loss of property through neglecting his affairs. In the second place, he gets an unwholesome reputation for immorality and misconduct. In the third place, whatever assembly he approaches, whether of Naityas, Brahmins, householders, or ascetics, he does so without confidence and is fearful. In the fourth place, he dies confused. In the fifth place, after death, at the breaking up of the body, he arises in an unwholesome state, a bad destination in suffering and hell. These are the 5 dangers to one of unwholesome morality. That's all. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Keely. So here the Buddha is teaching the natural law of Dhamma, of cause and effect, of what is the effect of having unwholesome and unwise moral conduct, right? And he teaches this, in other places in his teachings. He just explains what the moral conduct is, and he just explains this is the way of practice. But now what you're starting to see in these discourses is the results of that. We studied some of that in volume 6 when we were studying the natural law of Dhamma, where he was showing you certain moral conduct and what it leads to. But now with the cycle of rebirth, he's showing you some of the things that you're experiencing in this life, but he's also showing you things that are going to be affected in future lives. He's not sharing this with you as a way of guilt, shaming, or fearing you into doing anything particular. He's just helping you to see the natural law. And here at the very beginning, he's saying, okay, if you're lacking in moral conduct, then you're going to suffer this great loss of property, right? And we can see that at times when we lacked certain wholesome moral conduct, that we didn't have, our material possessions weren't as prosperous because we were neglecting our affairs, is what the Buddha is saying here, is that we weren't really paying attention to the things that we needed to pay attention to. So therefore we lost some of our material wealth. Then he's talking about this unwholesome reputation because of our moral conduct is immoral, and now we're experiencing this unwholesome reputation, which is now going to affect us in our personal and professional life, that it's going to be challenging in those situations. This third one, he's talking about how when you approach certain types of people, that you do so without confidence, and the mind is fearful. Because in the back of the mind knows that they're doing something unwholesome. And now when you approach people who are wholesome, because that's what he's talking about here, is Khattiyas, Brahmins, householders, and ascetics. These are people who are essentially practicing a decent amount of moral conduct. He's saying, okay, when you approach these wholesome people, you do so without confidence, and the mind is fearful. Because in the back of your mind, you know what you're doing is unwise. And now when you approach wholesome people, you feel uncomfortable around them. And then in the fourth place, he says this individual dies confused, right? They don't understand the natural laws. They don't understand where they're going next. They don't understand these teachings. Otherwise, if they understood, they wouldn't be doing those unwise things with their moral conduct. And then ultimately, because we're in this section about hell, he says, okay, at the breakup of the body, this individual who lacks moral conduct can be reborn into the realm of hell. So let me know what questions you guys have here on this particular chapter, if any at all. Okay, I'm not seeing any questions. So let's go to the next chapter, which is chapter 16. Is there someone who would like to read this one? Okay, we'll go with Robert, and then I think Samantha's willing to read, but if someone else would like to read, she's willing to let them read too.
Thank you. Crooked destination and rebirth. Monks, I will teach you an exposition of the teachings on creeping. Listen and attend closely, I will speak. And what, monks, is that exposition of the teachings on creeping? Monks, beings, are the owners of their Dhamma, the heirs of their Dhamma. They have Dhamma as their origin, Dhamma as their relative, Dhamma as their resort. Whatever Dhamma they do, unwholesome or wholesome, they are its heirs. Here, someone destroys life. He is murderous, bloody-handed, given to blows and violence, merciless to living beings. He creeps along by body, speech, and mind. His bodily Dhamma is crooked. His verbal Dhamma is crooked. His mental Dhamma is crooked. His destination is crooked. His rebirth is crooked. But for one with a crooked destination and rebirth, I say there's one of two destinations, either the exclusively painful hells or a species of creeping animal. And what are the species of creeping animals? The snake, the scorpion, the centipede, the mongoose, the cat, the mouse, and the owl, or any other animals that creep away when they see people. Thus, a being is reborn from a being. One is reborn through one's deeds. When one has been reborn, contacts affected one. It is in this way, I say, that beings are the heirs of their Dhamma. The cases of someone takes what is not given and someone engages in sexual misconduct are expounded in repetitions as the above discourse of someone destroys life. The 4 unwholesome verbal actions and the 3 unwholesome mental actions are shared with the same phrasing.
Okay, thank you, Robert. So here what we're going to get is we're going to get a series of discourses where the Buddha is explaining exactly what type of animal you can be reborn into based on your deeds and the way that your mind is functioning in this life. So here, this is about a crooked destination and rebirth, this exposition or this discourse on creeping. So what he's saying here at the beginning is he's saying that essentially you're the only one that can create Dhamma for yourself. Beings are the owners of their Dhamma, heir of their Dhamma. They have Dhamma as their origin, Dhamma as their relative, Dhamma as their resort. Whatever Dhamma they do, wholesome or unwholesome, they are its heirs. So other people can't create Dhamma for you. It's your decisions that are leading to any particular result that you're experiencing. Then he goes into talking about someone who kills and is murderous and doesn't have mercy towards living beings. And he says this individual creeps along by body, speech, and mind. What he means by that is like you're hiding your moral conduct, that you're not willing to let people be exposed to the things that you do. You're trying to hide the things that you do with your bodily actions, with your speech, and with your mind. You're not willing to let other people to be able to know what it is that you're doing. You're trying to hide it from them. And if you're creeping along, the Buddha is saying, okay, your Dhamma is crooked, right? Because if you're creeping along, meaning that you're trying to hide the things that you're doing, that means in some part of your mind, you know that what you're doing is unwise. So that's why you're trying to hide it from other people. If you think about when we were children and we lied, we would try to hide it from our parents, right? Or if we did something unwise, maybe we broke a certain thing of our mom's or dad's, we would try to hide it so they wouldn't find it, right? Because we knew that we had done something unwise and we were trying to hide it from them perhaps, right? So the Buddha is saying, okay, if you're creeping along, then your Dhamma is crooked, so therefore your destination is going to be crooked. And there's this potential to be reborn into the painful hells, meaning down into the lower realms, because the Buddha separated hell into multiple different subcategories. So he talks about this exclusively painful hells, and then these species of creeping animals, right? Because if you're creeping along in the human realm, then you need to go do that in order to extinguish that Dhamma. So a human being can function very much like a hell being, an animal, an afflicted spirit, and they can also function like a heavenly being as well. But you can also become a better and better human being, which is getting closer and closer to enlightenment, and now you can escape this whole cycle of rebirth. So that's what the Buddha is teaching you here. And now he also teaches this about all the other 10 courses of unwholesome Dhamma as well. That if you're doing any of those things and you're creeping along and hiding those things, that's where you're going to now potentially be reborn into either the hell or as a creeping animal. And what the Buddha teaches, if you guys don't remember back to previous times when the Buddha was teaching in the natural law of Dhamma and other things like this, he says that when you're essentially learning and practicing these teachings and you have made, mistakes in your life or missteps, and you're trying to learn and practice these teachings where you're having challenges and difficulties, he suggests that you go talk to either a senior member of the community or your teacher. And basically he says to lay it open, right? Explain what it is that you've actually been doing. And then that way you can get help. So students will come to me at different times. They will tell me all kinds of things about the things that they've done. And I can assure you that I've never heard anything from a student yet that I haven't done myself, right? So every time someone shares any details with me about the challenges that they're having in life, I've done those things myself and I know how to overcome them. So you're welcome to come and talk to me. It always stays with me. It's nothing that I share with any other person. Not even my wife or my son knows about individual things that are happening with individual students, because I keep that to myself and then I help the student. So if you're having challenges in any part of your life, I've had students come and tell me they have a pornography addiction, or that they've hired a prostitute or sex worker. I've had all kinds of things that people have come and talked with me about. So you can tell me anything and everything that you'd like to tell me. There's no judgment whatsoever, and all I'm going to do is provide you guidance that's going to help you to be able to overcome that challenge, because there's some craving, anger, and ignorance that's in there, and by helping you cultivate wisdom and how to overcome it, that's what's going to ultimately help you get to a better place. So this is what the Buddha's talking about here, and there's a similar discourse after this that we're going to be reading as well. So let me know what questions you guys have here. It looks like Robert might have a question. Go ahead, sir.
Yeah, I'm just wondering, the afflicted spirits realm is not listed as one of the destinations.
Yeah, here, I didn't specifically call it out, but we've entered into a section of the book that is specifically about hell. So all these discourses are related to hell, but sometimes the same things that are going to lead to the rebirth in hell are also going to lead to rebirth in the animal realm or realm of afflicted spirits. So this particular one doesn't relate to the realm of afflicted spirits. It's only hell in the animal realm.
Okay, but there might be others that are specifically related more directly to the afflicted spirits.
Yeah, we're going to go through 5 different sections of the book that are going to correlate to each individual realm. This book starts with the hell realm, so you're going to learn all about that first, then the animal, then we'll move on from there.
Got it. Thanks.
Yep. Okay, Samantha, you have a question?
I do. So this chapter is about creeping, and I understand the creeping animals. So if one is reborn into the animal realm, does your form of animal correspond with like your gamma? So whether you be, say, an elephant with a long lifespan versus a mosquito with a short lifespan, does that mean anything to do, does that have anything to do with your gamma, or maybe just how long you might need to spend in that realm?
Yeah, all of that has to do with your gamma. Every single thing you experience, the cause and effect is all related to the gamma. And once you're reborn into the animal realm, the Buddha describes it as a prison. You guys are going to see that in this book, that he talks about it as a prison, and he talks about how you need countless rebirths in the animal realm in order to get back out. So if someone was a human and then they went into the animal realm, they're not coming back to the human realm anytime soon. They're going to have countless rebirths there, because they need to bounce around and extinguish a whole lot of unwholesome karma. So that's one of the reasons why the Buddha talks about not allowing this life to go to waste, and don't be complacent, because once you get into this realm, it's such a treasure to be able to get into this realm. But yeah, it's all based on your karma.
So would it be better to be reborn as an animal with a longer lifespan versus one with a shorter one, where you're going to have to keep coming back? Like you have the potential, I guess, with a longer lifespan to maybe rid yourself of some of your bad gamma.
Yeah, so the longer you're in an existence, the more time you have to extinguish any type of unwholesome karma, but it's not like you're going to go from human, down into the animal realm and just have one life and then come back to the human realm. That would be extremely rare for that to occur. More likely than not, you're going to bounce around in the animal realm countless times before you ever get back to the human realm.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. All right, Keely, you have a question?
Yes, I have a question. Recently, I traveled to Tibet and saw a sky burial. I don't know whether you know about the Tibetan sky burial.
I don't know anything about that. I'm sorry.
Okay, so in the traditional Tibetan funeral, the deceased person's body is left exposed on a mutton chop to be consumed by vultures or other scavenging birds. So my question is, because of the sky burial master, they will peel the skin of the dead body and cut the body into pieces for the vultures to eat the dead body. So this sky burial master be enlightened when they died, or they will go to a lower realm?
You mean the individual who has died and then they do this burial for them? What's going to happen with that person?
Yes.
So the person who's died, it's going to depend on the condition of their mind at the time of death, the level of pollution. So it doesn't matter about how the body is buried or how it's disposed of, because at that point it's just a physical body. There's no mind there. So it doesn't matter how an individual is buried.
No, I mean the sky burial master, the one who cut the dead body.
Oh,
because yeah.
So the same thing, but by the time they're doing that, it's not a living being anymore. It's just like cutting up a tree or cutting a piece of steel, that it's just flesh at that point. So they're not killing a living being, they're not causing any harm or anything like that. So there's no unwholesome karma related to that.
Okay, I got it now. Thanks.
Yeah, you're welcome. All right, so in Zoom, we have a couple questions. Chris is asking, how and why does he subdivide hell? He's referring to the Buddha. So you're going to see throughout this book, if you study with all the chapters, how he subdivides hell. There's multiple classifications. He does the same thing for heaven as well. And this was the cosmology that existed during that time frame. It's not something that you need to learn today in order to be able to get to enlightenment, because today we tend to just think of the 5 realms and we just think of it all as one, like all hell and all heaven. But he did subdivide it because that's the insight that he had and that's what he remembered from his previous lives. So he shared that information to be able to help people to understand what he understood about those realms. But today we don't need that level of detail in order to be able to understand the cycle of rebirth, the 5 realms of existence, and make our way to enlightenment. Vibhav asked, how do beings in these realms extinguish their unwholesome karma? The way they do it is through experiencing the results of their decisions of being in that realm. So for example, if you have a craving, desire, attachment in your mind, there's 2 ways to eliminate it. Here in the human realm, we can cut it off and let it go, or we can fulfill it. I talk about this before, right? Where like if you have a craving to go to the Philippines, you could cut it off and let it go, or you could just go to the Philippines and check it out. And then once you're done, now you don't have that craving anymore. But you need to be observant of the mind, because now it might crave to go to Tokyo or Beijing or Shanghai or something like this, right? You need to be able to watch the mind and make sure it's not continuing to crave. But you can actually extinguish certain cravings by just fulfilling them. Like a good example of that is like probably at one point you had a craving to have a wife. And then once you got one, you're like, all right, I don't have that craving anymore. And you might have had a craving to have children at one time. And then once you got your children, it's like, all right, I don't have that craving anymore. That's gone, right? So it can experience it. So if an individual, using that example I used earlier, that in the human realm has a lot of craving for sex, and now they go down into the animal realm and they're having a lot of sex with lots of different beings. Now that slowly gets extinguished. Not fully, it's not getting extinguished fully because they're still going to be reborn into other existences, but it's starting to burn off through just experiencing it. So that's how beings in those lower realms extinguish some of their unwholesome karma. And you have to have a significant amount of unwholesome karma to be in those lower realms. So now as they're experiencing the results of being in those realms, it's a very hard life. It's a very difficult life. It's very challenging. So now they're experiencing those results. And now that's helping them to extinguish enough of their unwholesome karma to get back to the human realm or to the heavenly realm with an opportunity to get to enlightenment. Okay. You're welcome, Vibhav. Okay. So now we'll go to the next chapter, which is chapter 17. Is there someone who would like to read this one? Okay, Samantha. Thank you so much.
Leading to hell, to the animal realm, and to the realm of afflicted spirits. Monks, the destruction of life, repeatedly pursued, developed, and cultivated, leads to hell, to the animal realm, and to the realm of afflicted spirits. For one reborn as a human being, the destruction of life at minimum leads to a short lifespan. Taking what is not given, repeatedly pursued, developed, and cultivated, leads to hell, to the animal realm, and to the realm of afflicted spirits. For one reborn as a human being, taking what is not given at minimum leads to loss of wealth. Sexual misconduct, repeatedly pursued, developed, and cultivated, leads to hell, to the animal realm, and to the realm of afflicted spirits. For one reborn as a human being, sexual misconduct at minimum leads to hostility and competition. False speech, repeatedly pursued, developed, and cultivated, leads to hell, to the animal realm, and to the realm of afflicted spirits. For one reborn as a human being, false speech at minimum leads to false accusations. Argumentative speech, repeatedly pursued, developed, and cultivated, leads to hell, to the animal realm, and to the realm of afflicted spirits. For one reborn as a human being, argumentative speech at minimum leads to being separated from one's friends. Harsh speech, repeatedly pursued, developed, and cultivated, leads to hell, to the animal realm, and to the realm of afflicted spirits. For one reborn as a human being, harsh speech at minimum leads to hearing disagreeable things. Idle chatter, repeatedly pursued, developed, and cultivated, leads to hell, to the animal realm, and to the realm of afflicted spirits. For one reborn as a human being, idle chatter at minimum leads to others distrusting one's words. Drinking liquor and wine, repeatedly pursued, developed, and cultivated, leads to hell, to the animal realm, and to the realm of afflicted spirits. For one reborn as a human being, drinking liquor and wine, at minimum, leads to madness.
Okay, thank you, Samantha. So here, the Buddha is once again connecting moral conduct to rebirth, right? But he's also giving you things that you can experience in that particular rebirth as well. And remember, underlying all of this is the pollutions of the mind. It's not that somebody's looking over your life and judging to send you to a good place or a bad place, but to do any of these kinds of things, there needs to be a certain level of pollution in the mind, whether it's destroying life or stealing or sexual misconduct or any of these others. There needs to be a certain amount of craving, anger, and ignorance in the mind in order for this to occur. So what I suggest you do is you take something like this and you independently verify it, and you need to be able to understand how this works. So like, for example, the destruction of life. If somebody was repeatedly killing over and over and over again, the Buddha is saying, okay, it leads to this rebirth in these lower realms, which you may or may not be able to verify right now, but you can potentially verify this shorter lifespan, right? That you can look at people who are like serial murderers and stuff like this, and you can see what type of life that they have. Now remember, this isn't like everybody experiences exactly the same thing. You can have a serial murderer who lives until their 90s or even hundreds, right? Because everybody experiences their karma differently. But if you look at individuals who oftentimes are leading a life where they're murdering, and remember, it's not just someone like a serial killer, it's someone who goes off into war, right? If someone's like 18, 20, 25 years old, they go off into war, they're repeatedly killing, they have a very good chance of dying themselves because of the natural law of karma. And that's the shorter lifespan that you can see. You can see anybody who's done any kind of mass killing, they're typically experiencing a shorter lifespan. And one of the ways that this is occurring, in addition to what I've already shared, is that in order to kill, there needs to be a certain amount of craving, anger, and ignorance in the mind if someone's killing with craving, anger, and ignorance. And now that creates stress, anxiety, and other discontent feelings like guilt, shame, and fear in the mind. And that puts pressure and stress on the body. And now the heart and all the other organs don't last as long. And an individual can die with a shorter lifespan. Or someone could kill themselves. So like someone who's maybe been a serial killer in their 20s or early 30s, they might go off to jail, and now some of the other prisoners might end up killing them, right? You can see various stories like this in the news, that these kinds of things happen. So you can go through and you can independently verify. Some of these you might have actually done yourself, and you can independently verify. Like I think a lot of us have probably drank liquor and wine and taken other substances, and we can see that, yep, it exactly led to madness, right? During that period of time that we were using drugs and alcohol, we can see that the mind was experiencing madness during that period of time. So the Buddha is helping you to be able to see this cause and effect between morality and rebirth, but also what you can experience in day-to-day life. And remember, it's the pollutions that are underlying all of this, that the mind has to have a certain amount of defilement and taints in order to be able to experience these kinds of things where you're choosing to do these kinds of things. And if an individual continues to do it, they're going to be reborn into these particular realms of hell, animal, or the realm of afflicted spirits. No matter what you've done in your past, you can overcome that, right? That during the lifetime of the Buddha, there was an individual who killed 999 people. He studied with the Buddha, and he actually got to enlightenment in that lifetime. So I know no matter what you've done in the past, you have not killed 999 people. So if this individual could get to enlightenment during that lifetime, there's no reason why you can't get to enlightenment. No matter what you've done in your past, you can extinguish all of that and get to the point where now you're practicing this good, wholesome moral conduct because you've eliminated the pollutions in the mind. And that's what's going to lead to you being able to practice this wholesome moral conduct. So let me know what questions you guys have here on any of these. You can put that into Facebook, YouTube, or Zoom, or you can raise your hand in Zoom and ask any questions that you like. All right, I'm not seeing any questions anywhere. So let's move to the next one, which is chapter 18. Is there someone who would like to read this one? Okay, Miss Keeley. Let's see, yeah.
The unwise person's unhappy destination. Suppose a man threw into the sea a ring with one hole in it, and the east wind carried it to the west, and the west wind carried it to the east, and the north wind carried it to the south, and the south wind carried it to the north. Suppose there were a blind turtle that came up once at the end of each century. What do you think, monks? Would that blind turtle put his neck into that ring with one hole in it? He might, venerable sir, sometime or other at the end of a long period. Monks, the blind turtle would sooner put his neck into that ring with a single hole in it than an unwise person, once gone to hell, would take to regain the human state. I say, why is that? Because there is no practicing of the teachings there, no practicing of what is righteous, no doing of what is wholesome, no performance of merit. There matured watering prevails and the slaughter of the weak. If sometime or other, at the end of a long period, that unwise person comes back to the human state, it is into a low family that he is reborn, into a family of outcasts, or hunters, or bamboo workers, or craft wrights, or scavengers, one that is poor with little to eat and drink, surviving with difficulty, where he scarcely finds food and clothing, and he is ugly, unsightly, and misshapen, sickly, blind, cripple-handed, lame, or paralyzed. He gets no food, drink, clothes, vehicles, gardens, scents, and omens, bed, lodging, and light. He misconducts himself in body, speech, and mind, and having done that, on the dissolution of the body after death, he reappears in a state without basic necessities, in an unhappy destination, in suffering, even in hell. Monks, suppose a gambler at the very first unlucky throw loses his child and his wife and all his property, and furthermore goes into bondage himself. Yet an unlucky throw such as that is negligible. It is a far more unlucky throw when an unwise person who misconducts himself in body, speech, and mind, and on the dissolution of the body after death, reappears in a state without basic necessities, in an unhappy destination, in suffering, even in hell. This is the complete perfection of the unwise person's condition. That's all. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Keely. So here the Buddha is giving you an analogy, a story, to be able to help you understand how rare it is for somebody, once they're in hell, to be able to come back to the human realm. But it does happen, and it's able to happen. It's just that the lifespan in hell is so long. That's what he's essentially describing here, that this blind turtle at the bottom of the sea comes up for air once every 100 years. And the Buddha is saying it's more likely that this turtle is going to put its head into that ring than it is for an individual to be reborn out of hell straight into the human realm. It's very rare, right? So they're going to need to go into the animal realm, go into a realm of afflicted spirits, bounce around in those realms for a while, and then eventually make their way up into the human realm. So he's helping you to be able to see that with this analogy. And he's also explaining here how you can't get to enlightenment in the hell realm. You know, I've shared that with you guys before, but you can see it here, that there's no practicing of the teachings. There's no righteous things. There's no wholesomeness that's being done there. So he's saying that there's just mutual devouring, right? Like beings just kind of devouring each other and taking advantage of each other. So if this individual eventually does make it back to the human realm, or if they go from the hell realm into the human realm, he's saying that, okay, this individual is going to be reborn into a difficult situation here in the human realm. So this helps you to understand what's happening and transpiring in hell and how those beings come into this world, but also it can help you understand why beings come into this world and experience certain things within the human realm. And we should never look down on somebody. Like if we see somebody who's blind or sickly or some of the other things the Buddha's talking about here, like paralyzed, it shouldn't be like, oh, that person was in hell, like let's avoid them or something like that. It's like, no, when we see somebody like that, we would like to be able to try to help them as best as we can and maybe support them, encourage them into better and better things in this life, so that then maybe if they need rebirth after this life, that they can be reborn in a better experience, or perhaps they can even get to enlightenment in this life. But it's just more challenging for them with these kinds of things that they're experiencing as a result of decisions that were made in the past. So let me know what questions you guys have here on this particular chapter. This is chapter 18, the unwise person's unhappy destination. Okay, looks like Samantha has a question. Go ahead, ma'am.
In the hell realm, what could one do to eliminate unwholesome gama? Like, what would it take in order to be able to be reborn into a better realm?
Yeah,
if there are no teachings, you just bumble along and just kind of happen upon doing something that's right. I realize it's very difficult to get out of the hell realm, but if it is possible, there must be something you can do to get out.
Yeah, so you're going to see in this book, the Buddha describes in excruciating detail the type of things that are going on in the hell realm. And the beings there are just experiencing all kinds of pain and misery. And that's the karma. That's the results of their decisions. And that's what's extinguishing their unwholesome karma. Like, let's just say somebody was, like the Buddha talked about here, like essentially a serial murderer that was constantly killing. And they were reborn down into the hell realm. They're going to experience all kinds of pain for an extended period of time. And you're going to see the Buddha describing all kinds of details about the pain one would experience. And that in and of itself is extinguishing some of their unwholesome karma, because they inflicted so much pain while they were, say, here in the human realm, that now they need to go into the hell realm and experience an excruciating amount of pain for an elongated period of time. And just experiencing that is part of their unwholesome karma that they're now extinguishing. So let me talk about it here in the human realm in a way that you can understand it. You've heard me talk about in the past how I used to be quite bitter and harsh and hostile at different times with my wife. And then when I started cleaning up my practice and I started being loving and kind and warm and gentle, she was still being bitter and harsh and hostile with me for about 1.5 years, spread out over periods of time. So I still had to experience that. And that was my karma coming back to me. And then I knew how to extinguish it by not being bitter and harsh and hostile back to her. So in the hell realm, they're experiencing that continuous flow of pain and difficult circumstances and things happening to them, and they're just having to endure it. And then that's what's ultimately extinguishing it, because they're experiencing it. But it's not going to extinguish it fully in the hell realm. They still have more unwholesome karma to experience, whether they're in the animal realm, the afflicted spirit realm, in the human realm, and beyond, like in the heavenly realm as well. So there's unwholesome karma to be experienced. As long as there's an existence, you're experiencing unwholesome karma. But here in the human realm, we can cultivate wisdom to actively extinguish our unwholesome karma through the Eightfold Path, where in the hell realm, they're just experiencing it. It's just coming to them. And there's no way for them to now learn the Eightfold Path and actually actively extinguish it. They're extinguishing a portion of it just through experiencing it, and that's it.
So in the hell realm, it's more of a passive elimination of bad gamma.
Yep, that's one way to think about it.
Okay.
Yep.
All right. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Okay, I don't see any other questions anywhere. So this is chapter 19. Chris, this is one of the segments of hell that the Buddha was teaching. Is there someone who would like to read this one? Okay, Samantha, just 1 second. Yeah, this is about a page. Perfect. Okay, go ahead.
To be reborn in the hell of laughter. Venerable Sir, I have heard it said among actors of old in the lineage of teachers, if an actor in the theater or the arena entertains and amuses people by truth and lies, then with the breakup of the body after death, he is reborn in the company of the laughing heavenly beings. What does the perfectly enlightened one say about that? Enough, headman, let it be. Don't ask me that. A second time and a third time, Talaputa, the troop headman, said the same question. In a theater and arena, among beings who are not yet free from craving, who are bound by the bondage of craving, an actor entertains them with teasing things that excite them even more strongly to craving. In the theater or arena, among beings who are not yet free from anger, who are bound by the bondage of anger, an actor entertains them by provoking things that excite them even more strongly to anger. In the theater or arena, among beings who are not yet free from ignorance, who are bound by the bondage of ignorance, an actor entertains them with confusing things that excite them even more strongly to ignorance. Thus, being heedless and complacent himself, having made others heedless and complacent, with the breakup of the body after death, he is reborn in the hell of laughter. But should he hold such a view as this, if an actor in the theater or the arena entertains and amuses people by truth and lies, then with the breakup of the body after death, he is reborn in the company of the laughing heavenly beings. That is a wrong view on his part. For a person with wrong view, I say, there is one of two destinations, either hell or the animal realm.
Okay, thank you, Samantha. So here, this student is asking the Buddha a question, and the Buddha wasn't interested in answering it right away. He just said, hey, don't ask me that. But he asked him 3 different times, so eventually the Buddha actually answered him. Because oftentimes the Buddha knows that the particular answer is going to be undesirable to the student, and you're going to see this one when he talks to someone about the animal realm, that the individual breaks out in tears because the individual realizes in that moment that he's going to be reborn into the animal realm. And the Buddha said, don't ask me that, don't ask me that. But he kept asking him, and then finally the Buddha's like, all right, I'm going to tell you, and here it is. And then the person breaks out in tears. So here, the same thing, the Buddha's like, hey, don't ask me that question. But eventually the Buddha actually answers it. And he says, okay, if there's an individual who's entertaining and they're arousing craving, anger, and ignorance in people's minds as part of their entertainment, then they're going to be reborn into this subsection of hell, which is called the hell of laughter. People were thinking that, hey, if I do this and I entertain people in this way, that I'm going to be reborn in the laughing heavenly beings, right? And the Buddha's like, no, that's wrong view. And if someone has wrong view, meaning this lack of wisdom and the wrong view of the cause and effect of the Four Noble Truths, then right away, just because of wrong view, they're going to be reborn in hell or the animal realm. So that's why it's so important to establish right view and to not blame other people for the feelings that you're experiencing. For any person who has wrong view, if they die with wrong view, then they're going to be reborn in hell or the animal realm, right? So you would like to be able to establish right view, and that's why it's the very first teaching of the Buddha, because if you establish right view, that by itself will help you to ensure that you're not being reborn in hell or the animal realm. But there's other things that can lead you to the hell realm or the animal realm as well. So that's why you need to completely work on purifying the mind. But just this one thing by itself will lead to rebirth in the hell or animal realm. So the Buddha here is advising this individual on the question that they're asking about entertaining others. So if anybody has that type of job, it would be wise to do so with honesty and not to do what the Buddha is describing here, like arousing craving, anger, and ignorance. One of the examples I might think about here is, like, let's just say somebody was doing very provocative performance, maybe even disrobing during their performance and arousing craving, anger, and ignorance as part of that. That would be unwise to do that, because the Buddha is explaining to you here what it leads to. So let me know what questions you guys have here. You're welcome to put those into Facebook, YouTube, or Zoom, or you can raise your hand in Zoom and ask any questions that you like. Miriam says, are politicians similar to entertainers? Politicians aren't entertainers, although nowadays they maybe try to be entertaining, but that's not their ultimate livelihood. Their ultimate livelihood is politician. I don't see any other questions. So we have one more chapter for today. This is chapter 20. This is another subsection of hell for you there, Chris. If someone would like to read this, you're more than welcome to. Okay, we'll go with Keely. Go ahead, ma'am.
To be reborn in the battle-slain hell. Honorable Sir, I have heard it said by mercenaries of old in the lineage of teachers, when a mercenary is one who strives and struggling himself in battle. If others slay him and finish him off while he is striving and struggling himself in battle, then with the breakup of the body, after death, he is reborn in the company of the battle-slain heavenly being. What does the perfectly enlightened one say about that? Enough, headman, let it be. Don't ask me that. A second time and a third time, Yohajia, the headman, said the same question. When headman, mercenary is one who strives and exerts himself in battle. His mind is already low, wicked, misdirected by the thought. Let these beings be slain, slaughtered, obliterated, destroyed, or exterminated. If others then slay him and finish him off while he is striving and struggling himself in battle, then with the breakup of the body after death, he is reborn in the battle-slain hell. But should he hold such a will as this, When a mercenary strives and struggles himself in battle, if others slay him and finish him off while he is striving and struggling himself in battle, then with the breakup of the body after death, he is reborn in the company of the battle-slain heavenly beings. That is a wrong will on his part. For a person with wrong will, I say, there is one of two destinations, either hell or the animal realm. That's all. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Keely. So here again, a very similar question that people were asking, like, hey, this person's struggling in battle, they're kind of close to death. If you finish them off, meaning like, they don't have to suffer as much, haven't you done a good thing for that person? Hasn't this been a compassionate killing? And now you're going to be reborn in heaven for having done this for this person? And the Buddha is essentially like, nope, that's not what's going to happen, right? So this is a helpful discourse for people who think about things like euthanasia and things of that nature, that you can see that that's not the case. There's no such thing as a compassionate killing, that if you're killing, you've got a certain amount of craving, anger, and ignorance potentially in the mind. The only time when you wouldn't necessarily have that is say that someone breaks into your house and you have to take the life of this person in order to protect this being who you are. You could potentially kill without a craving, anger, and ignorance in the mind. It is able to happen, but it's very rare for that to occur. So if people are killing and slaughtering, like the Buddha is saying here, that their mind is already defiled, right? So their mind is already defiled because they're out there killing. And now when they see this other person who's close to death, if they go and kill that person, they're not going to just be reborn in heaven because of that, right? They're already experiencing a significant amount of craving, anger, and ignorance in the mind just to be out there on the battlefield and killing, right? So that's what the Buddha is saying here, is he's helping people to see clearly what is this natural law so that they can then awaken to this natural law. So let me know what questions you guys have here. This is very similar to the previous discourse. Okay, I'm not seeing any questions anywhere. So I'm going to end class here by just thanking all of you guys for participating, whether you're on Facebook, YouTube, or Zoom, whether you read or asked questions, or whether you're watching this on the replay or listening to it on the podcast. Thank you to everybody who's interested in learning and practicing these teachings. We're in this book, The Realms of Existence, and we're going to be in this book for quite a while. There's a lot of discourses like this that are really going to go through and really expose to you what the Buddha understood about these realms of existence, and it's going to help you to be able to maybe piece together some of the things that you've learned about his teachings from other parts of his discourses in the Pali Canon. Next week, I'm going to be in chapters 21 through 30. So if you'd like to read that ahead of time, you're more than welcome to. Tomorrow in the group learning program, I'm going to be in the third part of a 3-part series that I'm doing on the Eightfold Path. I'm going to be teaching the mental discipline section, where I'm going to be teaching right effort, right mindfulness, and right concentration in detail. So you're always welcome to attend that either 9 a.m. or 9 p.m. at the temple, or I do it here at home in the evenings. And then on Wednesday, I'm going to be in the 4th part of a 4-part series that I've been doing on breathing mindfulness meditation. So if you'd like to attend that, where you can meditate and ask any questions that you like, you're more than welcome to do that. So thank you all for joining, and perhaps we'll see you guys in a future class. Be well and take care. Sawadee ka.
Thank you for listening to this podcast. To provide support for this podcast, visit patreon.com/support Buddha. To access more teachings, visit buddhadailywisdom.com. There, you will discover a full range of courses, retreats, and online resources to assist you on the path to enlightenment. Remember to establish a daily, consistent meditation practice, along with learning and practicing these teachings. A well-developed meditation practice is the foundation in which to train the mind to attain enlightenment.